Hello and welcome to another polling station special, this time again on the US election with none other than the one and the only Neil Channing. Neil, how are you?
I'm very well, Will. Very well. I'm looking forward to this. I wanna try and pick your brains, see if I can pick you off as well. Maybe you'll give me some of those kind of boosted odds or something like that. I don't know.
Well, let's see.
Let me ask you a question, though. Just remind me, when does the election? What's the date of the election?
So polling day is the 3rd of November.
Now that's where you've gone wrong straight away, isn't it, Sunshine? Really? I mean, that is a common mistake I'm seeing people make. Do you know what percentage of people that voted in 2016 have already voted this year?
I believe the turnout is at, I think it's 57% already.
That is actually spot on. 57%.
Good.
71 million people, and we're recording this on Thursday night.
Thursday
today? Yeah.
Thursday night. But the last data we got through, 71 million casted ballots, and
so,
you're getting,
like you hear people talking about this election, like, oh yeah, it's next week. There's a few more days for things to change. 57% of the people have already voted. It's done. Yeah. This is an in-running event we're talking about now. It's not something that's going to start next week. Sorry. Anyway, go on.
No, don't be sorry. I think that's a really good point and a really good way to sort of kickstart this conversation, because I've been reading lots about this. There was a very powerful article in Real Clear Politics which told us not to look at early voting data.
It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Given that more than half the people have already voted.
Either. One thing I think is just worth noting is the fact that the gap between Democrats and Republicans in early voting data is narrowing a bit, but the Democrats are still well ahead. And also that it doesn't account for unaffiliated voters. But that said, I'd be pretty sure, based on the data we have, and that is verifiable, that most Trump voters will be happy to wait until the day, and that most Biden voters are
I think that's, there was talk last week that 55% of people that vote early vote for Biden and 45% vote for Trump. From the figures I've seen so far, if you assume that people do vote for the party that they are affiliated to, it's going to be a lot more Biden-centric, the people that have voted already, much more than 55%. But it's interesting, I noticed the media, the narrative generally is that, there's still time for things to change. One of the things about the way this price is a bit weird, because, that has been the talking point. The only people I ever talk to are other gamblers, really. And most other gamblers that talk to me about this election are like, well, I don't get it. I look at, Nate Silver or analysts generally, and they're all telling me, it's 85%, it's 90% or whatever. Why is the betting market 66-34? And there's an assumption. Part of the assumption in the betting market is that there's still time, for Trump to pull something out of the fire or something to go wrong for Biden. There's not really. First of all, there isn't much time until next week anyway. And secondly, 57% of the people have already voted.
I agree with all of this. I would add also, if people who aren't necessarily punters are watching this, the existing liability.
What the hell are they doing watching it?
Well, hang on. I hope I've managed to invite some people here. But I would add also liability probably played a big part in it, in the sense that
absolutely.
Trump had a choice, was facing 7 or 8 other options at the turn of the year, right? At some points you had, for example, Michael Bloomberg was punted into 5-1. Biden was like a 10-shot to president when the primaries were happening. This despite the fact, actually, that I looked back up today, he was leading the national polls all the time of Democratic candidates.
Well, there was a time when he was 25-1 to be the Democratic choice.
It's a wild drift. But in general, actually, that is probably one of the big things of the election, actually. And I think you've touched on why there's such a disconnect between the models. And 538, by the way, is probably about the most conservative big model. The
economists think we might as well give up now. It's finished.
96%. I was also looking at another model which I have been watching very closely. Sort of a hot tidbit here, but you want to follow Patrick English,
Okay.
who creates the college forecast. He was very good in the elections previously.
It's quite funny though, because haven't you noticed, like, you must be like me, you speak to gamblers. People are talking about that. What was that fight where it was a boxer against a MMA guy?
Mayweather McGregor.
Mayweather McGregor.
this
And people
tangent.
talked about that at the time, like this is the biggest mismatch ever. You know, if you don't bet half of your net worth on this, you've absolutely missed a trick. You know, this is a stupid price. It should be 100 to 1 on. There hasn't been an event since that until this election where I'm hearing the same kinds of things. Lots of professional gamblers saying to me, you know, if you haven't had X% of your net worth on, I mean, I've had 100, so it's fine. You know, you haven't had enough. And also, like, there's this, you know, we get that, like, I like NFL betting, you know, as a big thing. And you get that thing where quite often, you know, the kind of the wise guy side, the sharp money side, the syndicates will play one team, and it'll be the ticket count in Vegas. They'll say, oh, you know, 73% of people that are betting on this game are taking Miami or whatever. But we're actually fielding even amount of money on each side, and I think that's what's happening in this election. You know, Biden, if you count up the number of people backing him, it's much less. But the money, everyone that's got big money is on Biden, and all the small money is on Trump. Somebody said to me that, you know, to mention one of your competitors, Flutter, are seeing a lot of money from other European facing products that they've got. Lots of small €20, €50 bets on Trump. And there was talk of, I don't know whether it's true, or whether they were hedging that into the exchange. And that was propping the price up.
Possible, but I can't, just as a disclaimer, right, I can't really speculate on that. But that narrative...
Well, I don't know. I mean, that was, you know,
no, I mean, certainly bigger stakes are on Biden, smaller, more regular stakes are on Trump. That's been probably a thing for over a year now anyway. Right. I mean,
just anecdotally, I was in a betting shop the other day. I risked the global pandemic to go on a quick shop run.
COVID secure workplace, though.
Well, I'll tell you the bet I was having later on in this conversation, so you'll be able to benefit from it, even if you get the plague. But no, the manager said to me that he'd literally had, you know, a trickle of people every single day. So I said, I'm probably the only person that's had a bet on the election. You probably haven't seen another bet. And he said, no, really, honestly, we get 3 or 4 people come in that I've never seen in my life every day to bet Trump. That's a bit weird, isn't it? Like betting shops, like normally it's just like the regulars, isn't it, really?
Interesting. I mean, one thing I would say is Trump is the, let's say, working man's bet. In the sense that we're seeing lots of stakes, which you wouldn't have kittens if he lost, but it'd be okay if he won. And I don't know how it correlates to 2016, but I think there are a number of people, by the way, who you have to remember they're not inside the information sphere where they will be looking at something like college forecasts every day, where they'd be looking at 538 in The Economist and seeing what happened with the latest poll, where these people don't grade pollsters or whatever.
No, I think you're definitely true.
But it's an interesting thing.
But I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were saying it was quite an interesting point that, you know, one of the differences, I heard you talking earlier in the week about the differences between polling and betting as a predictor, and obviously, you know, polls are a snapshot of where we are now, whereas people are betting on what they think will happen by the end of the election. So they're totally different things, but they both have their worth in terms of measuring who's going to win. And betting markets can reflect the amount of money wagered, which doesn't necessarily give you a prediction, because maybe all the Trump supporters are really rich and want to bet 10 times as much, or whatever, you know, we don't know. But actually, you know, when Trump won before, and also in the Brexit situation in terms of the betting. In both cases, the bookmakers were reporting 5 or 10 times as many people betting on the outsiders, those two outsiders, than on the favourites. And, you know, some people often talk about the betting market being a better predictor because it's the wisdom of crowds. There's lots of different people predicting the event. But if the bookies are going to just ignore that and say, well, we don't care because we're just going to do it on the amount of money rather than the number of people, maybe they're not such a good predictor. I don't know. I mean, I personally, I think, I'm with you. I think if the polls are telling me somebody's winning by, you know, 6, 8, 10 with a week to go, and 57% of people have already voted, and I can get 2 to 1 on or 8 to 15, I've got to have a bet, really. I'm with Biden.
I agree. We are in a gift source situation. But anyway, we are more here for your views. Just quickly, actually.
So just on the outright, if you want my view on the outright, I'm with Biden. I just want to make one other quick point on something I read today. I thought was quite interesting. It's about front runners. There's been quite a lot of research done into polling because, you know, in the UK, they start voting at, you know, whatever it is, 7 o'clock in the morning. And then the media can't talk about it until the exit poll. They're not allowed to. It's against the law. But of course, in the US, they've been voting for a week now, and people are talking about it all the time. There's huge amounts of, you know, quite accurate information about how many votes have been cast and you know, which parties it's gone to, and people do react to that. Even on the day, you know, people on the West Coast may turn around and say, well, there's not much point voting now. You know, we've won already or we've lost already. And I can't be bothered to go and queue up for 4 hours or whatever they have to do in America. Ludicrous. I mean, you know, Bolivia, they don't have to do that. Anyway, so there has been quite a lot of research done into it. And actually, it's the parties that are leading. If people like to kind of bet on a winner. So people like to vote for someone they think is going to win. If you know that your guy is 8% clear, you still go and vote. Whereas if your guy's losing by 8%, you think, oh, it's not worth it, we can't win now. That's weird, isn't it? You would think that people would say, I've got to go and vote to try and catch up. And I don't need to vote because my guy's already won. It's actually the other way around. People go with the guy that's leading. And there's been 2 studies done into that. And apparently that's the way it works out. Anyway, go on. You want to ask me about other markets. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Well, actually, I was just going to ask you quickly, any sort of key issue things or anything else you want to mention before we go on to the selections?
Well, I mean, you know, I did the obvious maths on the Electoral College, and for people at home who aren't such aficionados, basically it's like a point system. Each state gets a number of points, minimum 3, depending on you know, how big a state it is. So California is the biggest one, and you get 55 points for California. Florida's pretty big as well. You get let me check, 29, isn't it? It is 29.
Correct.
And Texas is sorry, the
38.
You get 38 for Texas.
If we're doing it,
So those are the, you know, those are kind of the big states. And obviously we have the same situation in UK elections where there are kind of safe seats, safe states, and marginals. And probably if you just looked at it and said, and I scribbled it down here, if you looked at it and said that the Republicans win all the states where they're 3 to 1 on or shorter, they'll win 21 states like that, and that'll give them 164 points, or college votes as they're called. And if the Democrats win all the ones where they're 3 to 1 on or shorter, then they'll win, and I'll just check my numbers, 24, and they'll get 279. And that leaves you with only a few states to worry about, and 6 of them, and they're worth 95. And that's basically what the whole election comes down to, is just squabbling about those 6 states. And those will be Iowa, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. And every other state is, you know, I mean, you could make a case for saying that I personally don't think the Democrats will win Texas. I think the demographics have definitely changed in Texas. Houston has become one of the most urban sprawl towns in the whole world.
Yeah.
And lots of people have moved to Texas. Texas is not redneck.
No, plenty of people coming
anymore.
from other states, and
yeah,
there is a
California. A
demographic
lot of
change.
people move there from California.
You have some people who are saying that Texas may have just gone blue as a state.
Yeah, but I think you'd need a super high turnout, and I don't. I'm not a big fan of Biden. I think they're both pretty poor candidates, really. But I don't think he's going to get quite the high enough turnout that you need for Texas to swing. So I don't really see that happening.
Right. Okay.
But I think in terms of the margins, if you look at those, if the favorite wins every single state, which is quite possible, I mean that could easily happen. Then it's 305, 233, and the Democrats win by 72. So with you just need to flip one. So if you flip, the most likely one to flip would be if you give Iowa, which is the closest of the ones where the Republicans are favorites, or Georgia actually is Florida obviously is Florida. So if you said the favorite wins every single one apart from Florida, which is what happened 2 elections ago, then it's going to be 334 plays 204. So these are the margins we're looking at. I personally didn't have a strong view. I looked at your handicaps, didn't have a strong view. There was one state I've had a bet. Well, I've had a bet in a few states, but there was one.
Tell us one state. Really, really keen to hear the one state.
Okay, so it's the Democrats. I'm going to bet the Democrats in Iowa.
Okay.
So Iowa was a Republican state in the 70s under Nixon, Ford, Reagan. And then in '88, when Bush Senior was around, Dukakis won Iowa. So that Dukakis wasn't like a super brilliant candidate. So
getting visions of the big tank thing again, and
for a state to flip to Dukakis that was showing perhaps that the state was going a bit more Democrat. And then when Clinton, Gore. Gore just won it by 4,000 votes. Then Bush idiot won it by 10,000, and then Obama won it twice. So generally speaking, apart from that little blip when young Bush won it only by 10,000, it's kind of gone a Democratic state. Somehow Hillary managed to lose by 51 to 42, which is a bit ridiculous, really. Anyway, we've had plenty of polling from January to September, and Trump had kind of tiny leads then. But in October, up until a couple of days ago when I did this research, there were 13 polls in Iowa, and Biden led in 8 of them. Trump led in 5, and there were 4 ties. Early voting, and this was about 3 days ago, I think I looked at this. 52% Democrat, 31% Republican, and we know that 55% of Democrats vote early, so it will change back. 1,455,000 voted in total in 2016. By last Wednesday, 710. By yesterday. Yesterday being Wednesday, 710,000 had voted, we had 52% Democrat, 31% Republican. So, I think he's got a decent lead there, Biden. We know that Trump's going to come back because more of his people are going to vote on the day. Maybe I could make a case for saying it's a coin flip, but I think Biden is ahead. If Biden has a good night, if 2-1 on is wrong, which it may be, if he has a clear win, and a lot of people are saying he'll win a landslide. Certainly, if he wins places like Texas, he's definitely going to win Iowa. If he wins Georgia, he's got a good shot in Iowa. If he this is the kind of place where on a good night he wins it quite easily. on a close night where Trump wins Florida, I think it's quite hard for Iowa to go. But I think basically it's a coin flip, and I see Star 4-7 and 5-4. I think 5-4 is a fair bet. I think
fair enough.
You know, I mean, these are small edges. I think if I was pricing it up, I'd probably be 10-11 each or two.
All right, fair enough. Would that be your nap? Can I ask?
That would be my nap of the state. I mean, I like a few of the other states. I mean, I'm not really a working man, but the other states are not really working men prices. You know,
but quickly, I'd be interested to know states and party.
Well, I think the Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania kind of trifecta. I think Biden will win that. Yeah.
Okay.
But you can't obviously the problem with these markets for as kind of normal punter that doesn't really like to bet odds on is that you can't do multiples because there's related contingency. You know, clearly if Biden wins Pennsylvania, he's probably already definitely going to win Michigan and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because it means on the nights when he wins Pennsylvania, he's had a really good time. And if he has a really good time, he'll win all three.
Okay.
It's very unlikely he's going to win Pennsylvania and lose Wisconsin, for example. I think Wisconsin, actually, of those three, would be my preferred one. I think that's about 2-7 or something like that. I'm finding it very. I saw some polling from Wisconsin just before we started this, and it's hard to see him losing that one, really.
All right. Anything other than the states that you would have the bet for?
Well, I'm looking forward to you putting a few more markets out, actually, because a lot of the states are a bit boring, aren't they? I mean, you know, obviously, if you need to get more life savings, you could lump on Alaska or something like that.
Fair enough. Just on that, what would you like to see put up?
Well, what about you could have the closest state.
Okay.
The state won by the least number of votes. That's quite an open market, I think.
All right. Interesting. I'll pass it on.
That's what's that going to be. That'll be like 6th the field or something, probably. I don't even, off the top of my head, who's the favourite? I don't know. Florida's the closest in the betting, I guess. So maybe it's Florida.
You would probably have Florida favourite, I would imagine, in any situation.
Yeah, all of those marginals. Georgia, North Carolina is pretty close.
Yeah, Georgia, North Carolina.
And Iowa as well.
Yeah, I was going to say Iowa. That's a really interesting one. Neil, it gives
people a bit of a working man's price, then, doesn't it? It would be 6th the field, I think, or 5th the field.
Oh well, I cannot promise any.
You can go quarter first 4. Why are you punting? This is what we want.
When the traders watch this, I am not sure I'm going to be the most loved person at this company. But that said, speaking of company, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much, Neil.
No problem. Nice to be on.